Hello, I'm Nico. I am a technologist and a digital strategy consultant, and you are watching Media Literacy in the Age of Machine Hallucination. Now, the story begins when I was 10 years old. I woke up like it was any other day to get ready for school, and I made myself a bowl of cereal. I went to turn on the TV to watch some morning cartoons, but no cartoons were on. Instead, I saw the World Trade Center getting hit by planes over and over and over and over again. And I apologize for the gratuitously heavy start to this video, but this moment on September 11th, 2001 shaped how I understood the world. This was the origins of my media literacy. And for a lot of us who remember 9/11, it was kind of a media literate's rite of passage. It marked a turning point, not just in global politics, but in how we consumed, trusted, and were shaped by the media. In 2001, there was no question that 9/11 had happened. It was on every screen, every channel, all day. 24 years later, the footage still circulates. Now, I have family in Los Angeles, and in January 2025, two major fires broke out. People had to evacuate and get information from their loved ones, and I opened my phone to images like these. It felt real, familiar even, but it wasn't. The fires in LA were real. I mean, people died. Entire neighborhoods burnt to the ground. I had friends who lost their homes. It was absolutely devastating. But these images and others like them, videos posted to TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, shared millions of times, they were all fake, right? I mean, there's literally an extra L in the Hollywood sign if you look at it. And while people in LA were trying to figure out if their homes and their families were safe, the internet decided to amplify these AI generated images of the crisis. And images like these are just one part of a much bigger problem for media literacy. That brings us to what I'm discussing today, the biggest issue for media literacy, I believe, the dawning of the age of machine hallucination. Now we're surrounded by content, more than ever before, but less and less of it is being generated by humans. Images, articles, videos, voices, all generated by machines. Machines that don't quite know what they're saying, but they're modeled on how to say it convincingly. These generative media tools, Midjourney, ChatGPT, Google's Gemini or Veo 3, Stable Diffusion, some would argue that they can't create meaning themselves, and yet they're trained on how to simulate it. What's worse is that they're prone to hallucination. We'll go deeper into what this means, but the consequences for these hallucinatory AI glitches can be far reaching. As hopeful media literates, we are now facing the challenge of navigating a landscape shaped by synthetic media, opaque algorithms, and manufactured engagement. The roots of this new age of media literacy can be traced back to the 9/11 attacks. September 11, 2001 marked a turning point in how media shapes public memory and perception. In the aftermath, American journalism became saturated with patriotic imagery and sentiment. The line between objective reporting and nationalism began to blur. It was a moment that revealed just how vulnerable the public was to emotional manipulation and nationalist propaganda, and how urgently we needed critical media literacy. But instead, as with many of our civil liberties, media literacy was one of the first things that we were willing to sacrifice in the name of unity, security, and in some cases, revenge. Back then, most people still consumed media the old fashioned way. We're talking nightly news, newspapers, shared broadcasts. It was linear, contained, familiar. And that all changed with the rise of social media. In 2004, we see a wide eyed Mark Zuckerberg create Facebook, initially as a way to meet girls at Harvard. Platforms like MySpace and Zynga had already begun reshaping online identity and social communities, but Facebook introduced something more insidious: a personalized newsfeed, curated under the guise of social connection. And that curated feed would soon become the primary way that millions of people received their news. Fast forward to 2016, when the Cambridge Analytica scandal exposed just how data harvested from Facebook was used to precisely target individuals with political advertising and manipulate public opinion without informed consent. This incident revealed weaknesses in the security of surveillance capitalism, where personal data was becoming a tool for behavioral influence on a mass scale. And the scandal made media literacy evolve to understanding how black box data ecosystems, algorithmic targeting, and the structural ways in which digital platforms can manipulate democratic processes. Just as we started to understand the cost of behavioral influence at scale with situations like the Cambridge Analytica scandal, Sam Altman and OpenAI opened another Pandora's box, not just influencing belief on platforms like Facebook, but by generating it. Altman's leadership at OpenAI ushers in this new age of media literacy as AI generated content and tools become ubiquitous and powerful. OpenAI's strategic handling of media has helped frame narratives about artificial intelligence and its societal implications. The rise of AI driven media means that media literacy now also involves questioning the origins and the intent of the information, recognizing the influence of algorithms, and staying alert to manipulation by both humans and now machines. This timeline underscores a media literacy trajectory from passive consumption in the early 2000s to today's state of participatory and algorithmic media. A majority of the content we engage with at this point is distributed through algorithmically mediated platforms. This evolving toolkit that one would need for media literacy has become ever more complex as we navigate an exponentially opaque information environment. So, if the last decade has taught us anything, it's that media literacy isn't just about identifying misinformation anymore. It's about understanding how information even gets to us in the first place. Again, let's look at Facebook. The patented newsfeed introduced algorithmic curation as default. Instead of choosing what to read, users were handed a feed shaped by opaque engagement metrics based on psychographic elements, like the Ocean model, which categorizes users based on traits like openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. The Cambridge Analytica trials exposed that neuroticism wasn't just the metric for targeting, it was something that platforms began engineering in their users. Content feeds weren't just responding to users' anxiety, they were actively designed to provoke it because anxious, paranoid, neurotic users engage more with your product. This created a kind of illusion of knowledge where people felt informed based on a headline, a preview, a meme in the comments. Sometimes this sparked useful dialogue, fact checking, peer correction, all of that happening in real time. But more often than not, the speed and volume of posts rewarded reaction over deep reflection. This shift made media literacy more complicated because now we had to teach not just source evaluation, but platform fluency. Platforms like TikTok push that concept even further. Short, emotionally charged videos designed to grab attention in seconds circulated without context. It's said that 1 in 5 news-related TikToks contain false user-generated information. But on TikTok, the aesthetic and the affect often matter more than the accuracy. TikTok has run its own media literacy campaigns, but the platform still incentivizes virality over validation. And the way we teach source checking hasn't fully caught up with that. Then there's Instagram. Information's primarily visual as well. Infographics on Instagram are often shared without citation. Posts go viral based on how they look and not whether they're credible. And on all three platforms, credibility becomes extremely performative. This is where AI literacy comes into the picture. Because behind these platforms, behind what trends, what's recommended, what's shown or hidden, are the algorithmic systems on servers powered by AI-driven data analytics. Personalization, content filtering, recommendation engines, all of them shape the information environment in real time. To be media literate now is to understand how these systems work and how they influence what we think we know. AI literacy means asking who trained the models that showed me this, what was left out, what's the agenda behind the automation. Media literacy is no longer just a reading skill, it's machine literacy or systems literacy. And by the time most of us have learned the system, the interface, and have a handle on how it works, it's already updated. That brings us to hallucination and the dead internet theory. This is the feedback loop of misinformation that we currently find ourselves in. In AI, a hallucination refers to when a model confidently generates false or fabricated information, and it happens all the time. Case in point, when asked how many times the letter R appears in the word strawberry, both GPT-4o and Claude, paragons of next-gen intelligence, hallucinated the answer as 2. For those of you spelling it in your head, it's 3. But hallucination is also a fitting term for what happens at scale when entire content ecosystems start to behave in ways that feel real but aren't grounded in anything human. Take Shrimp Jesus as an example. What started as an AI-generated image, a bizarre fusion of religious iconography and shrimp, somehow went viral, not because people believed in it, but because the algorithm did. Platforms amplify hallucinatory content and engagement spikes. One of the ways this happens is through that psychographic profiling, like with the ocean model explained before. Studies suggest that people high in neuroticism are more likely to engage with content that's emotionally provocative, angry, or fear-based. Platforms optimize for this engagement. AI learns what works, and the result is a feedback loop that doesn't just reflect our emotions, it rewards our emotional volatility. And this isn't always explicit or intentional, but it is built into the mechanics. Then layer on top of that the machine hallucinations. Language models make stuff up confidently. Images, facts, citations, all fake but plausible. And because the content looks right, it's easy to mistake for the truth. You've probably seen images reposted by a less media literate family member. Images like this of a soldier in uniform saying something like, "Today's my birthday, please like." I mean, look at this. It's 2 soldiers in what appears to be moving traffic. It feels human, but it's AI generated bait, optimized to trigger empathy and engagement. The soldiers sitting on the highway with a birthday cake don't exist. The story isn't real. Some of the likes and the shares for the story aren't real, but for some people who interact with this image, the emotional response is. And in that moment, the media stops being a reflection of reality and becomes a collective hallucination. Engagement goes up, critical thinking goes down, and all of this leads to what some people are calling the dead internet theory. The idea that a growing portion of what we see online is just bots generating content for other bots to react to, with human attention as the casualty. We can see a dead end made up of this content, and whether or not the dead internet theory is true, it doesn't matter because it feels true now. You scroll past the same AI slot videos, the same engagement bait captions, the same images, and something starts to rot. Comments are vague, reaction feels off. Posts are structured to go viral, not to communicate anything real. Media stops being a conversation, starts to feel like a simulation of a conversation, scripted, hollow, recursive. For media literacy, this presents a new kind of challenge. Not just spotting fake news, but learning how to detect when the entire interaction was never meant for a human in the first place. The dead internet theory names a creeping suspicion that somewhere along the way, the internet stopped being a place we shape and started shaping us through an endless loop of machine-to-machine noise. And now that might sound dystopian and extreme, but when you look at the viral life cycle of something like Shrimp Jesus, a piece of absurd AI-generated art shared millions of times, the theory doesn't feel that far-fetched. And for media literacy, this means we're not just teaching how to identify misinformation, we're teaching people how to identify reality collapse and machine hallucination. Not just is this true, but was this even made by a person or by a system designed to trigger engagement without meaning? So that brings us to our solution. These core literacies make up our new information toolkit: AI literacy, algorithm literacy, and media literacy. They aren't electives. These are survival skills in the new information world. Let's start with AI literacy. AI systems don't understand meaning, but rather they simulate it. They generate content based on statistical patterns trained on massive data sets straight from the internet. That means they don't know when they're wrong. They don't know what's sensitive, ethical, harmful, what's marketing copy, what's journalism. They just predict what sounds right based on what's been said before. That's how we get the hallucinations, the made up facts, the fake citations, the synthetic images presented with total confidence for your engagement. Understanding how AI actually works, what its limits are, how bias seeps in, how outputs are shaped, gives us ways to stay grounded in a time where language itself is being mass produced. It helps us resist the temptation to conflate technological fluency with truth. Algorithmic literacy goes hand in hand with that. See, most people treat their feeds on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook like neutral windows to the world. But every feed is an engineered system designed to predict what will keep you watching, reading, scrolling, and sadly designed to keep you somewhat neurotic. These systems aren't curating based on what's important, they're curating based on what's profitable, engagement, eyes on ads. And understanding that leads us to see media with new eyes. Not why did this go viral, but who benefited from this going viral. Is its virality and engagement organic, or is it artificial? Is it bots? We can't make informed decisions if we don't know how content is ranked, filtered, suppressed, and automated. And that brings us to media literacy in its broadest sense. Traditionally, media literacy meant evaluating sources, checking facts, understanding biases. But today, it also means knowing when the content isn't even meant for you. In most cases, it's meant for the algorithm, or it's meant to extract data from you, your behavior, your location, your engagement patterns. You're not always the audience anymore when you're using the internet, and sometimes you're just the raw material. Your attention is a resource. Media literacy today means learning to recognize these moments when the video, the post, the article isn't there to inform you, but to observe you and to shape you. These literacies, AI, algorithmic, and media literacy, give us tools to see the system more clearly, to know when we're being nudged, to pause before we react. They won't fix the internet, but they might help us move through it without losing track of what's real and what's being manufactured around us. Remember to be careful out there and practice these literacies, and thank you for watching.